West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Bringing now a member of the Select Committee investigating January 6th attack, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. We've all been talking for a couple of hours about how extraordinary yesterday was. Michael Beschloff saying, presidential historian saying it was one of the most remarkable days he can remember. I want to ask you, you were there. What was your takeaway?
Well, it was dumbfounding, although not exactly surprising, to learn directly that Donald Trump knew that the crowd was armed. There were lots of people with weapons out there, as Cassidy Hutchinson testified, guns and rifles and flags sharpened into spears and other kinds of implements for violence. And Donald Trump's attitude was just, let's wave them on in and get those metal detectors out of the way, because they're slowing down the growth of my crowd, which is going to be exhorted and incited to march on the U.S. Capitol. So I think that Cassidy Hutchinson destroyed any pretense that Donald Trump and Mark Meadows and all the president's men didn't understand precisely what was happening on that day.
Congressman, good morning. As you know, this was an unscheduled hearing. We learned about it the day before. You all rushed back from your district to hear the testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson. What was the urgency of this hearing?
Well, the evidence is of such fundamental importance. We wanted to get it out. My colleague, the vice chair of the committee, Liz Cheney, pointed out at the end that we're very troubled about different efforts to influence witnesses. Witness tampering is a crime in the United States, and we want to make sure that we send a very clear message right now that the committee will not tolerate any form of witness tampering or obstruction of justice.
So were you concerned then, Congressman, you might lose her as a witness because of the pressure she was feeling from the outside?
I really don't want to say anything more about that. I will say that Cassidy Hutchinson was an exemplary witness who demonstrated remarkable courage and character in coming forward to explain exactly how serious the threat of political violence was and how much it was understood within the White House before it took place.
Congressman, at the end of the hearing, the committee chair kind of made a open call to those who may want to refresh their memories or find courage, decide to come in or join in and add to this testimony. Was he speaking directly to some people who have already testified and perhaps were not as truthful as they could have been?
I think Chairman Thompson was speaking to everyone. I mean, the attitude of this committee under House Resolution 503 is we want all relevant evidence from all material witnesses, and we want nothing but the truth, and we want all of the truth to be able to come out. And the good news is that the vast majority of the people who have information have come forward and cooperated voluntarily with the committee. There's a relative handful of people who have been hiding and ducking and, dodging the truth here. But we want everybody to come forward and tell us exactly what they know.
Okay, so that includes like Mark Meadows. I mean, who would you all really want to hear from? Who needs to come in?
Well,
and speak up?
I would be very interested. Yeah, I would be very interested to hear from Mark Meadows. Of course, he began to cooperate at the beginning of the investigation and turned over thousands of messages that have been of use to us, and then suddenly pulled the plug on his participation, apparently when Donald Trump was angry about that. We need to hear from Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, because he's such a pivotal figure in terms of blocking even more egregious and dangerous actions by then President Donald Trump. So we really need him to come forward to fill in a lot of details, but his name has been invoked repeatedly throughout these hearings.
Congressman Raskin, Jordan here. Yesterday's testimony was certainly stirring and mind-blowing. And the witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, had previously given 20 hours or so of testimony already to the committee. Was there any new information that she shared in the open testimony that she had not previously covered with the committee? And also, was she offered immunity from perjury for cooperating?
So yesterday's witness had done several interviews with the committee, and her testimony represented the cumulative information that the committee had received. But we were simply of the mind that the public needed to know about all of this, and I'm not aware of her asking for immunity or her being offered any. She's done nothing wrong, and I've not heard a single whisper that she may have committed any crimes. On the contrary, she was clearly working very hard to stop the violence and to do whatever she could to maintain the rule of law under very difficult conditions. And I think that there are some truly heroic dimensions to what she did yesterday.
Congressman, we've been focused this morning on the details of everything you've been laying out. We've talked about the president knowing there were weapons, all the things that happened that day that sort of tried to clear a path for this attempted coup. But one of the narratives, one of the stories that came out of the testimony yesterday that really made headlines and grabbed people's attention also was this incident inside the presidential limousine that Ms. Hutchinson testified to. I mean, in stunning detail about a president who got up and tried to grab the wheel and then got into a physical altercation with his lead Secret Service agent. Our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, reporting this morning that a Secret Service spokesman tells him agents in Trump's presidential SUV are available to testify under oath, responding to Hutchinson's new allegations. A source close to the Secret Service says both men dispute that Trump grabbed the steering wheel or assaulted an agent. They do not deny, however, that Trump was irate and demanded they drive to the Capitol. Is it your understanding, and have you corroborated from other witnesses, that President Trump grabbed the steering wheel in that limousine and got into an altercation with his lead agent?
Well, Cassidy Hutchinson is an entirely credible witness. She testified under oath in front of the entire country. Everyone was able to judge her demeanor. She has no motivation or interest in lying in any way. And so what we have on the other hand is some anonymously sourced rumors of feelings of particular agents. Look, anybody who wants to testify can come forward and testify under oath about what happened. All we're interested in is the truth. And, I sort of expected yesterday that Ms. Hutchinson, as a young woman telling the truth, would come under fire from anonymous sources. But, that's Washington for you. But I will tell you that nobody is challenging the central material facts of her testimony, that Donald Trump and Mark Meadows were perfectly aware that there were armed people in the crowd, and that Donald Trump wanted to wave them in order to swell the force of that crowd, which he then aimed like a missile at the U.S. Capitol. And in fact, he wanted to lead that march up to the Capitol. He wanted to be in there, and that's what he became so irate about, and nobody's challenging that. Again, I fully expected that Ms. Hutchinson would come under attack, but from my estimation, she spoke with entire credibility and authenticity yesterday.
And we've, again, as I said, we've been focused on exactly what you just mentioned, the plot that day. But as you know, it's going to be used in certain quarters as evidence that, well, now you can't believe anything she said if this story turns out not to be true. So is it your understanding? You've seen all the evidence, you've heard from witnesses, you've talked to the two people who are in this story, Mr. Ornato and Mr. Engel. Did that incident happen in the car? Okay, I guess we lost Congressman Jamie Raskin. We lost his IFB there. So, guys, obviously, Joe and Mika, this is a story that's grabbed a lot of people's attention when Cassidy Hutchinson testified to it yesterday, and they have heard testimony previously from Mr. Engel, who was that Secret Service agent. They have heard testimony from Mr. Ornato, who she cites as having told her about that story inside the presidential SUV.
Right, exactly. She had the person inside the SUV, and then, from my understanding, again, I want to make. I'm not sure if I have all the names correct, but I think it's Mr. Engel, Secret Service agent, who was there when it was being recounted what went on inside that SUV, and he certainly didn't say anything. He was there. Willie, I think we know what's happening here, and it's probably happening with Cipollone too. You have people who are concerned, Secret Service members who are concerned that if they're testifying about how a president acted in a private moment, that they will somehow be undermining the reliance that presidents can have around Secret Service members, just like Pat Cipollone. But as others have said, we understand that. We understand wanting to protect the institutions, whether it's the Secret Service or whether it's a lawyer's confidence with a president and the advice that he or she gives or takes. But this is obviously something that's extraordinarily different. We've got the congressman back. So, Congressman, what Willie was asking, obviously, you heard the question. It was just whether you've heard the testimony from Mr. Engel, you've heard other testimony surrounding that event. Are you confident that by the end there will be corroborating testimony that corroborates that story?
Well, I've certainly heard nothing to contradict it, and it's consistent with multiple accounts we have of the president being incensed and outraged that, armed people were being kept out of the crowd, and also that he was unable to participate in the march Mussolini style on the way to the Capitol so he could go and presumably seize the presidency. We can't forget what the entire plan was. It was to get Mike Pence to reject Electoral College votes so that either Trump would just win outright in the Electoral College, or more likely it would be kicked into the House of Representatives for a contingent election, and then we would have voted by state, and they felt as if they had the states lined up, and he was ready essentially to be restored to power at that point, and all of it would have been filmed as he would have ridden to glory with the violent masses who had stormed the Winter Palace, as some of his extremist followers were describing the event.
It is Tuesday, the 29th of June of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these miserable, meddlesome priests, these theocrats on the Supreme Court, and everywhere else in our society, I might add. Jesus H, you know what? I used to love it when I would go bale hay on the family farm back in Dakota. And the most religious of the family, well, the aunts stayed true, but I don't know, the husbands, when we were out in the fields working, they were the most foul-mouthed people in the world because they couldn't do it at home. And, but they were quite religious in some ways. Yeah, well, maybe only when they were around my aunts. There's that, too. So maybe that's why there's always this get back against women. That's why they're getting back at women right now, taking away their rights on the ostensible reason that, God wants it. How do you know? I refuse to let some Opus Dei furry dom like Alito tell us what is the moral way to live. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to allow it. Not that guy. All right? Not that guy. Hey, look. If they seem like creeps to you in the beginning, go with your first assessment. They're creeps. When I first saw Alito, creep. Of course, when I first saw Bork, oh my God, I had no idea what to think about Bork. Yeah, well, I'll say this. Bork conjures up a lot of images, and then when you finally see him, like in a picture, because I don't think we'll see him in the flesh anymore, but when you see him in a picture, you go, oh my God. That's what I was seeing in my head. Scary, isn't it? And I got to tell you, Alito was get back for not getting Bork on the court. Okay, just letting you know. Okay, so was Thomas. Thomas was also get back for not getting Bork on the court. They could have attended to this a lot sooner if they had that guy pulling the levers and the shadow docket. Yeah, I guess the shadow docket's getting used quite frequently now that the maggot court, the theocrats, the Christo-fascists, I might say, they're drunk with power. Mm-hmm. So, hey, you like clean air? Too bad. States can't regulate that. There's no such thing as businesses can't be regulated. Great. I worked for a machine shop in Buena Park, and I remember speaking with the owner's son, who happened to be my best friend, but still. He used to say that the only reason that they stopped dumping the solvents and the oily substances that they used to cool off the lathes and all the cutting discs and everything that were used in the machine shop, the only reason they didn't put all of that toxic chemical sludge into the gutter that then went out into the ocean is because the government told them not to. That was the only reason. So I don't know. Somebody wants to make America into a shithole country, and it ain't us. We like clean air. And apparently, the royal court, as I shall call the Supreme Court from now on, who believe they have been anointed by God to judge the quick and the rest of us, whatever that means. I don't want to say, but actually the dead too. They're going to judge the dead too. Oh boy. Yeah. So this football coach that gets to kneel at the 50-yard line, who apparently Gorsuch said, was a solitary soul, contemplative prayer, that it wasn't, done in any ostentatious way, is what he was basically trying to get at. And then Sotomayor brought the receipts. Says, well, actually, you're lying, you lying sack of shit. They lied at the confirmation hearings, and then they lie in the decisions. One would think that if you lie that much, you shouldn't be a judge. You lie on the application, you lie in the confirmation, and then you lie in the... I was going to say goddamn, but we shouldn't blame God for this. After all, we all have our own volition, right? To sin or not to sin. And Gorsuch, well... I'm just livid over it because since Gorsuch is going to fulfill all that his mother wanted when she was running the EPA. Yeah, look it up. And she was so maligned by all those eco-terrorists who wanted clean air and water. Jesus, eco-terrorists. All right. Because, you know, they don't have to worry about their clean air and clean water, they think. Jeez, you know? Okay. Well, we have these massive heat waves. Not my fault. Really? Then it's your mom's. And you're fulfilling her dream. I don't know. What was their dream? Of making the earth a barren husk? Jeez. I thought we were supposed to have it as verdant and, you know, a cornucopia of abundance for all. No, they want to have it a barren husk. And whatever is nice that's left, they want to have it. No one else can. All right. Doesn't sound like heaven on earth to me. Nope, not one iota. So, yeah, will no one rid us of these meddlesome, miserable priests? Especially the ones on the Supreme Court. Opus Dei furry dom. That's the moral code we got to live by. Forget it. Jesus. Okay. I could go on. As you know, I can. But should I? Will I? No, we're going to stop right here and get into the curated part of the show because I'm so livid about so much. And we might as well just stop there because I got enough to be livid about in what we've curated. So what is part of the curated show? Well, yes, thank you, Representative Jamie Raskin, as he discussed Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony to the J6 committee. And they're going to P-tape her testimony. Oh, no one, he didn't grab for the steering wheel. Well, you know what? There is precedent for bringing the Secret Service in front of an investigative legislative committee like the J6 committee. And why is that? Because that was because of what Ken Starr and others did to Bill Clinton in the Monica Lewinsky part of the scandal. All right. So, hey, get back some mofo, ain't it? Yeah, it is. Bring them in front of the committee, put them under oath. And you got to understand that this lead agent is a Trump yes man. He got a job with Trump. He quit the Secret Service and got a job with Trump. Probably to shut him up. That's how Trump works. That's how mob bosses work. And Trump's a mob boss. We all know it. I mean, wannabe. But he's doing pretty good. He got to be president of the United States. Was he just a figurehead? By more controlled, shall we say, rational interests? In their goose-step march to turn the United States and all of representative democracy around the world, I don't know, underfoot. Yeah, that's what goose-steppers do. Anyway, thank you, Jamie Raskin. On the rest of the menu as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, health clinics scramble to divert patients as states' trigger bans on abortions kick in. The Michigan Supreme Court threw out the charges against former Governor Rick Snyder and others in the Flint water scandal, and that is a scandal. And in a slap to the face, New York City Mayor Eric Adams suggested that Rudy Giuliani be investigated for filing a false police report. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Scotland leader Nicola Sturgeon proposed a new independence vote in October of 2023. And for the first time, the French Parliament elected a woman as its speaker. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page from that chat room link to the left is the link to our Patreon site, and please, yes, become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We could use the help to pay our bills because we pay our bills. And thank you for your generosity in allowing us to pay our bills as the founders originally intended so many years ago. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that. And thank you for the help on the droplet situation that caused us to lose our stream for getting David's show yesterday. Apparently, it didn't affect the broadcast part of the stream, but any live streams that we brought in to broadcast were affected because of a emergency maintenance on droplets in the cloud. A likely story. Anyway, that's how tech works, and we call that an act of God, because whatever the service providers say is going to happen is godlike, and there's nothing you can do about it except adapt. And so we do. But we apologize for that because it was beyond our control. And since it was an act of God, as I've just described, we are now, I guess, absolved by a higher power, I guess. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, do so at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime and get that posted on social media platforms like Twitter. And as you know, the show notes and links are where you can find the real reportage, as it was reported by the real reporters. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And you can get the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library over all these 11 years. Well, most of them because we're still uploading stuff. But anyway, you can find the library for Netroots Radio at the Internet Archive at archive.org. Okay, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Comes out of the Associated Press by Heather Hollingsworth and Lindsay Tanner. They call her desperate, scared, and often broke. Some are rape and domestic violence victims. Others are new mothers still breastfeeding infants. Another pregnancy so soon, they say, is something they just cannot handle. Heart-wrenching, said Angela Huntington, an abortion navigator for Planned Parenthood in Missouri, who is helping callers reschedule canceled abortion appointments, sometimes hundreds of miles away from their homes, after the fall of Roe v. Wade. The ruling has set off a travel scramble across the country, with a growing number of states mostly banning the procedure. Clinic operators are moving. Doctors are counseling crying patients. Donations are pouring into nonprofits. And one group is dispatching vans to administer abortion pills. I wish they stopped calling it that. Clinic Some cities like Kansas City and St. Louis, or do they call it St. Louis, also are drafting plans to help with travel logistics. Huntington has been preparing for this moment for months, even before the Supreme Court's decision last week to end constitutional protection for abortion. The procedure has become difficult to nearly impossible to obtain in states including Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Basically, she said, they were living in a post-Roe era. I think basically we are living in a post-Roe era. Now a fresh round of laws are taking effect. Staff at a clinic in Nashville were flooded with calls from patients trying to understand the new legal landscape after a federal court on Tuesday allowed the state's ban on abortion as early as 6 weeks to go into effect. In Arkansas, some patients already were headed to a Planned Parenthood clinic in Little Rock to obtain medication-induced abortions when the decision came down last week. Upon arriving, they were sent home. Huntington and others try to help move their appointments to clinics in Kansas, Illinois, and even Colorado. If a patient is broke but has access to a reliable car, Huntington can offer gas cards. She works with nonprofits to arrange commercial flights and lodging. In recent weeks, she said a group called Elevated Access has enlisted volunteer light aircraft pilots to transport patients to abortion appointments, sometimes departing from small rural airstrips. White of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The Michigan Supreme Court yesterday, Tuesday, threw out charges against former Governor Rick Snyder and others in the Flint water scandal, saying a judge sitting as a one-person grand jury had no power to issue indictments under rarely used state laws. It's an astonishing defeat for Attorney General Dana Nessel, who took office in 2019, got rid of a special prosecutor, and put together a new team to investigate whether crimes were committed when lead contaminated Flint's water system in 2014 and 15. State laws authorize a judge to investigate, subpoena witnesses, and issue arrest warrants as a grand juror, the Supreme Court said, but they do not authorize the judge to issue indictments. The court said in a 6-0 opinion written by Chief Justice Bridget McCormick. She called it a Star Chamber comeback, a pejorative reference to an oppressive closed-door style of justice in England in the 17th century, and some might add might be happening right now, here in the good old USA. The challenge was filed by lawyers for former Health Director Nick Lyon, but the decision also applies to Snyder and others who were indicted. The cases now will return to Genesee County, where requests for dismissal will be filed. The saga began in 2014 when Flint managers appointed by Snyder dropped out of a regional water system and began using the Flint River to save money. While a new pipeline to Lake Huron was under construction, state regulators insisted the river water didn't need to be treated to reduce its corrosive qualities. But that was a ruinous decision. Lead released from the old pipes flowed for 18 months into the majority black city, but it was okay because they were black, remember? The Michigan Civil Rights Commission said it was the result of systemic racism, doubting that the water switch and the brush-off of complaints would have occurred in a white, prosperous community, and you know how that works. Snyder has long acknowledged that his administration failed in Flint, calling it a crisis born from a breakdown in state government. Well, that state government was under his leadership. Staff bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New York City Mayor Eric Adams suggested that former Mayor Rudy Giuliani be investigated for filing a false police report for claiming he was assaulted by a heckler who clapped him on the back at a Staten Island grocery store. Someone needs to remind Mayor Giuliani that falsely reporting a crime is a crime, Adams told reporters, saying he'd watched security video that undercut Giuliani's harrowing account. The former mayor, age 78, described it like being hit so hard it felt like being shot with a gun. The heckler, who police said cried out, "What's up, scumbag?" as he walked away from Giuliani, was arrested and spent more than 24 hours in jail. Wow. That's some correcting there. When you look at the video, the guy basically walked by and patted him on the back, Adams said. It was clear that he was not punched in the head. It was clear that it didn't feel like a bullet. It was clear that he wasn't about to fall to the ground. No, he wasn't. All right. With a little bit of levity there, let us now go to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Unhappy Together. For surreal British mockumentary Brian and Charles, directed by Jim Archer in his first feature, and written by its stars David Earl and Chris Hayward, boy, is the marketing mistoned. Watch the zippy trailer with its quick cut set to the turtles happy together, and you'd think that this movie, about a reclusive, awkward rural inventor who builds himself a robot companion despite his lack of training and despite his incompetence, you'd think that this movie is a lighthearted romp. It's not. Instead, it's a moderately paced story framed by quiet establishment shots of the overcast Welsh landscape, grimly beautiful, yet leaking with isolation and disappointment. When Charles the Robot sees a travel show set in Honolulu and immediately wants to go because of the sun and the warmth, not because of the hula girls as the trailer suggests, we don't blame him. And all the movie's ads branded as a comedy, and maybe it's like Cringe, without forcing you to sit in horrid moments. It's got the same rhythm as Cringe, where you hold the joke 2 or 3 beats longer than you should. And like Cringe, I think it wants me to laugh at these sad, flailing failures who maintain an unrealistic sense of their own self-worth and or importance in the face of their ineptitude. Hoping, I guess, that I either excel in privilege or lack in empathy. And the copy for Brian and Charles is, "Some friends are built to last." Which is clever, but Brian and Charles aren't friends. They are parent-child, with Charles starting out as a toddler and then rocketing through adolescence to adulthood, struggling to adjust to a world he's been thrown at in the care of a creator who's well-meaning but ill-equipped to mentor him. I don't know. If you like The Office and Parks and Rec and jokes about cabbages, maybe give this film a shot. If you get motion sick easily, maybe not. You know, documentary, handheld camera, There's a lot of instability in Brian and Charles that have me nauseous halfway through. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Good eating habits developed in childhood can last a lifetime, but getting children to eat their fruits and vegetables is a common problem. Eating them adds important nutrients, helps control weight, and reduces the risks for many serious illnesses. Children in the U.S. are eating more fruit. However, 60% of children get fewer fruits than recommended, and 93% don't get enough vegetables. Childcare, schools, and school districts can help change this by meeting or exceeding federal nutrition standards for meals and snacks, including fruits and vegetables wherever food is offered, and helping children learn about and taste fruits and vegetables. At home, parents can eat a variety of fruits and vegetables with their children and provide them as snacks, even if it takes many tries. Also, parents can include their children when shopping for, growing, and preparing fruits and vegetables. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management, and S, smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind. Like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest. Uh-oh. Or that time you forgot to roll up your windows in the car wash.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a remote control would have come in handy then. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Life doesn't come with a remote control. Yikes! So you're on your own with the wasps. You have the power to take control of prediabetes. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage, with our special guest, Christopher R. Riano, the president of the Center for Civic Education and co-author, along with William Eskridge, of Marriage Equality, From Outlaws to In-Laws. Christopher, what were the Stonewall riots, and why are they seen as such an important milestone in the LGBTQ plus rights movement?
You know, it's incredible to think about how a series of really spontaneous events and demonstrations by members of the LGBTQ community, particularly people of color and transgender individuals, that really began as a response to a police raid on June 28th of 1969 and went on for a couple different evenings after that, really became the first real time that members of the LGBTQ community rose up in Greenwich Village here in Manhattan and decided that they wanted to fight for the gay liberation movement and really began the 20th century fight for LGBTQ rights here in the United States after facing so much oppression and really an anti-gay legal system for the 1950s and 1960s. It's truly incredible that following much of the civil rights movement of the 1960s and following in the footsteps of that movement and much of what was the anti-Vietnam War movement, the influences began to truly bubble up in Greenwich Village on those hot summer nights in late June and early July of 1969, which kicks off a whole series of over 50 years that eventually culminates in the changes that we've seen today.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Christopher. That's all for today's podcast. This episode was made possible by the support of T-Mobile. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
If and when the Supreme Court reverses Roe, who will suffer? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And the list of who will suffer is a long list. That includes victims of rape, victims of incest, victims of domestic violence, teenagers, low-income workers, women of color, immigrants without documents, really all members of marginalized groups. In contrast, for the wealthy, the right to choose will, for the most part, remain relatively intact. They will be able to access that health care. They will have the wherewithal to travel. That's obviously not the case for women who literally can't afford to miss work, for single moms who can't leave their kids, for women who don't have money to travel and live in a state that has criminalized buying abortion pills. What are they to do? Studies show that women unable to access abortion disproportionately are women of color, who, denied an abortion, are much more likely to live in poverty, be unemployed, and be unable to escape violent male partners. In addition, a nationwide abortion ban, one study shows, would increase pregnancy-related deaths by 21%, 33% among black women, who already are 2.5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. Which means that overruling Roe may well initiate a death spiral for women, as well as a potential death spiral for constitutional rights. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. Jesus Polares, a Chicano miner and union organizer, was deported from the United States. He was charged with having communist sympathies and declared an undesirable alien. At the time he was deported, Polares had been in the United States for more than 20 years. He found work in New Mexico as a coal miner. He first stood up to the mine bosses in Gallup, New Mexico. When he dared to speak out against the company, he was fired. He then
then went to Madrid, New Mexico, where he became involved in union organizing. There again, he was fired for speaking out, evicted from his company home, and blacklisted. Polares recognized that Chicano mine workers needed to stand strong. He helped to found the Liga Obrera de Habla Española, or the League of Spanish-Speaking Workers. The organization quickly gathered members around northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. It grew from a few hundred miners to more than 8,000 strong. Then in 1935, the miners went on strike in Gallup. Martial law was declared. 300 miners and their families were evicted from their homes. When a warrant was served on one miner to throw them out of their homes, others blocked the doors in an effort to stop the eviction. They were arrested for breaking and entering. Protesters converged on the jail and were met with tear gas. The sheriff and his deputies opened fire on the protesters. The fight left one sheriff and 2 miners dead. In the aftermath, Polares was jailed for his role as a labor leader. He was deported, along with more than 100 other Chicano miners. Deportation was a tool used to stifle organizing amongst Latino workers. Liga Obrera never recovered from the loss of its leaders. The organization lost strength and momentum. But Liga Obrera is proof that workers can organize and fight for a better tomorrow.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs around 90 or maybe a little above, maybe a little below. But we will have abundant sunshine with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the mid-50s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then sunny tomorrow with highs in the mid to upper 80s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. I should add that it looks like we may have some rain on Sunday, which would be nice. I wanted to add also, tragically, there was a house just up the street here in town that burned, and pretty much burned to the ground. And many agencies from different towns and the county over came and put that fire down because it is right on the grassland border. So Oregon Department of Forestry had a couple of giant water trucks. Those look like 800-pound or gallon water trucks. They were big. So they were there to make sure there was mop up and everything was done, and it looked like nothing, no sparks. Fortunately, when this house caught on fire, it was when the winds had died down, so it made it a lot easier to suppress it and keep it contained. Tragically, though, the family lost their home. Okay, let's see. Oh, I wanted to add, it looks like the county has taken away a confirmed case from the total that we had, and it stands at 461 and 25 confirmed cases rather than 26. And that deceased remains the same confirmed at 549. Grass pollen is rated high in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 23 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is very high at level 9. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.13 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is drying out at 61%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 80 degrees and sunny. Rome is 90 and fair. Kyiv is 76 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 80 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and fair. Tokyo is 80 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 55 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 and mostly cloudy. And New York, New York is a sweltering 82 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's really fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Carla Adam of The Washington Post brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Nicola Sturgeon, the most senior politician in Scotland, proposed yesterday, Tuesday, to hold a fresh referendum on Scottish independence in October 2023 through a maneuver that she hopes can bypass Boris Johnson's refusal to permit such a vote. Sturgeon, the leader of Scotland's semi-autonomous government and of the Scottish National Party, argued for the new referendum as she spoke at its parliament in Edinburgh. She unveiled the question to be asked on the ballot: should Scotland be an independent country? The question was met with cheering and clapping. Sturgeon stressed the importance of having a lawful referendum with an outcome that would be internationally recognized. Nearly 8 years after voters rejected the same question on independence, she said she would write to Johnson asking for permission for another vote to be held. Assuming he refuses, Johnson has long said that a second referendum will not happen on his watch. Then Sturgeon said she would press on by referring provisions of a referendum bill to Britain's highest court. What I am not willing to do, what I will never do, is allow Scottish democracy to be a prisoner of Boris Johnson or any Prime Minister, Nicola Sturgeon said.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jeffrey Schaefer and Masha McPherson of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The new Speaker of France's lower house of Parliament, the first woman to hold the post, vigorously defended the right to abortion and called on the chamber to be vigilant about protecting it from reversal. The National Assembly elected Yael Braun-Pivet as Speaker in its first session since Emmanuel Macron's party lost its majority in elections this month that handed new power to far-right and far-left camps. Braun-Pivet is a member, or is it Pivet? Braun Pivet is a member of Macron's centrist alliance Ensemble, which still has the most seats in the assembly, but no longer enough to comfortably adopt laws. The assembly is France's most powerful house of parliament. The divided chamber is preparing to tackle proposals on fighting inflation and enshrining abortion rights in the French Constitution, in response to the U.S. Supreme Court decision stripping women's constitutional protections for abortion. Abortion in France was legalized in 1975 and has broad political support. The brutal decision handed down last Friday by the U.S. Supreme Court that reversed its commitment that shocked us so much is a stark reminder to be vigilant, Braun Pivet said after becoming Speaker. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and you know it will. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.